What if I told you you could make the world a better place by playing Dungeons and Dragons? How does that make you feel?
Well,
Makes me
of
feel
course.
good. Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
And I'm your guest, Dale.
And I'm your co-host, Ian. We hope to inspire you with creative content that you can bring with you on your next adventure.
I am super excited. Dale, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm really happy to be here. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
I'm a big fan of your product. One thing that I really believe is that Dungeons and Dragons is a game, and tabletop in general is a game that's designed for everyone. And I know that it's not always accessible to everyone, and it doesn't always reflect the variety of backgrounds that everyone comes from in the challenges and trials and stuff that is part of uh, our lives. And I think that what you've put together here with Limitless Heroics is phenomenal. So, Dale, we obviously got a nice sample of your content. Before we delve in that, can you tell Crit Nation and all of our wonderful audience a little bit about yourself and Wyrmworks Publishing?
Sure. So Wyrmworks Publishing is dedicated to helping you make other people's lives better. Right? We want you to be able to be the hero. We want to give you the resources to use tabletop role playing games in such a way that you actually make the real world a better place. And so right now, our big project is Limitless Heroics, and what it is it's a compendium of literally every disability, neurodiversity, and mental health symptom in existence, plus a bunch of fantasy ones. Because if you're playing D&D, there's going to be other things in a magical world that wouldn't happen in the real world, and so the idea is that you can you can either replicate real world diagnoses or conditions or whatever term you want to use, or you can have something all new, and you can either use that for player characters or for NPCs. And so it's also a tool. A lot of people think, well, I'm not sure that I'd want to play that a character like that, right? But this is also a dungeon master tool to
Mm-hmm.
just populate your world. If you think about how uh, the real world, about 15-20%, depending where you are, of the population is disabled. All right. And so when you're creating a fantasy world, you tend to start with the real world, and then you go, okay, what twist do I give it to make it fantasy? All right. And
Yep.
so then it becomes this question of why do you not have disabled characters? Why did so I mean, you're essentially removing them, and oftentimes it's not a conscious decision.
Right.
It's how D&D was kind of designed with that. It's not built into rules as written. And so we want to just make it easy for people to take that and include that in their game, to make it more like the real world, and also so that you can, just by using the write-ups, the mechanics in there, uh, or even if you don't use the mechanics, just like for an NPC that maybe the mechanics don't specifically apply, but you just give them the you communicate that disabled people exist, and they exist in my world too.
And I think that that's a really great point because I have never, honestly, in a world with adventurers, I had never thought to include people who are already have some sort of disability. And that you're right, that's not something that I consciously avoided. Which, honestly, if anything, it would make sense that I should have, a few people with, missing limbs, for instance, because there's it's such a dangerous world. But to even have, people that were, born a certain way, and to not include that, I realize how much personality that the world should have that I've been kind of omitting and not intentionally.
Right.
Um, and so when I saw this product, I was very kind of knocked on my ass because I was like, holy crap, not only is, as you mentioned, this a great resource for players who want to give more personality to their characters, but also as a DM, it makes it easier to include others and flesh out the world in a more real way, I think, especially in a fantasy setting. Even, one of the things I was reading in some forums about stuff like this was, well, there's abilities and stuff that get over them. I was like, yes, but most people don't have access to that, and it's costly, and a myriad of other reasons why they don't have access to it. And you would just be marginalizing that if you just went ahead and just made it disappear like that. Obviously, player characters are typically a very rare breed among the world's population. And so for me, this really gives me a great tool to not only make my player characters more interesting, but to show that the world is truly reflective of the world that we experience ourselves, and that sometimes people are born with disabilities, but that doesn't stop them from being heroic or still becoming important people in our worlds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and that's something that I can't emphasize enough, because it's something that I didn't really think about before either.
Hmm.
Right. And I mean, I so much of my life, I have children who are neurodiverse. I have worked in various disability fields since middle school. All right. And so it wasn't really something that I had thought about before either, until I think really it was seeing things like the combat wheelchairs, seeing
Hmm.
the controversy with Jen Kretschmer's adventure in Candlekeep and stuff like that, and I went, oh yeah, and it was just something that I hadn't really thought about, and I thought, wow, why did I not think of that before? And really, that's kind of how this started. That I said, oh, well, there needs to be more of that. And at first, I started looking for assistive devices and prosthetics and all that kind of stuff. And there was a little bit out there. Like there's the combat
Hmm.
wheelchair, and if you went on like DM's Guild or just kind of did a little googling, there was a little bit out there, but not very much.
Right.
And so then I went, okay, well, I'll create a book of prosthetics and different assistive devices. And then I went, wait a minute, this is a solution without a problem, because if you don't have people with disabilities in the first place, then they don't need assistive devices.
Right.
And then, wait a minute, why are there no people with disabilities?
and 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 when I was reading through this, and I'm sure Ian can think of far more examples than I can, but I'm a big comic book person, and as I was thinking back, some of my most memorable characters have a form of disability. Okay, so some of my favorite characters might be villains in some cases, like Modak, but he's got he's got the small body with the big brain, and to me that shows that whoever designed that character might have been considering that stuff, where he needs this. He makes up for his lack of physical abilities with his mental prowess, and I think that makes that a far more interesting character than just somebody like crap, who's the Hulk's genius enemy dude? I can't
Oh, the
remember his
leader.
name.
The
Yes, the
leader.
leader. Thank you. Oh, how did I forget? How did I forget that? But he's a good example. I mean, they're basically comparable as far as being super smart, but one just has better development because of the challenges that Modak had to overcome. Of course, he's also trying to destroy everything, but
Yeah.
that's no here, no there. Not
Also,
related.
also going to test too, but hey.
So I do want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff in here. I don't know if do you have anything to add, Ian?
Not in particular. I
Okay.
do think it's an interesting topic to touch on, and it's definitely a discussion worth having with some tables for sure.
Yeah. Now the sample that or that I have, I don't know, I don't remember if you sent it or if I got it from your website or the guild. I don't remember where, but um the mechanics and stuff that you included in here are actually it's a wide variety, and most of them are left open to how you utilize them as a player. Like when you talk about, you break it down by like different body parts and stuff. For instance, like
Huh.
something as simple as appendages or your face. Each one has these different uh, options, and you like the face, for instance. One of the options you can roll on is a tumor. Well, that gives you a lot to think about when you're developing a character. Well, where is the tumor on the face? What does it look like? How does it make that person's life more difficult? As I was thinking about these things, the more I was able to develop an interesting character who has to then overcome those challenges. One first thing that came to my mind with the face and tumor is one having a tumor that's so big that interrupts his ability to speak, but also this person wants to be a wizard. And so I was thinking that finding ways to overcome that would be really cool. First thing I thought of is using Mage Hand to hold it out of the way when he wants to cast spells or something like that. I don't know if that was the intent you were going for with this sort of product.
Yeah, so we um, wanted to kind of replicate the experience. All right, to
Hmm.
give now obviously, someone who is playing a disabled character in a game, or encounters a character, it's not the same as, because you can turn it off. You end the
Yeah.
game, and it's done, and
Right.
you're only sort of playing the part. But at the same time, you are going to run into challenges, and in fact, the book has an appendix on how to, and it's also worked into some of the descriptions. Okay, so if you have problems speaking, right, and
Hmm.
you have verbal components, what do you do about that?
Hmm.
Right. And
Hmm.
so there's how to modify spells and things, and what the extra costs and things like that is necessary
Right.
to make that happen. And so all of that kind of mechanics, if you're paralyzed and you want to cast a spell that has somatic components, same thing. And um and, and so work that in while still keeping game balance, and not just sort of hand waving it, so to speak.
Right. Right.
And um and so, because, and the other thing is with the prosthetics that are in there, real world assisted devices are, they they tend to have a trade-off, right? And so like a prosthetic arm is oftentimes, you can get your sort of cosmetic ones, or kind of very basic ones that um, don't do a whole lot. You can get, I mean, in our modern world, you can get these sort of robotic arms that can grip things and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Those things are really expensive, and they're really heavy. And I've talked to people that said, "Yeah, I had one of those. I don't use it anymore. It was more trouble than it was worth." And you get chafing and just all kinds of issues with it. And and so we wanted to communicate through the various assistive devices that we have, that that all these things that we have in the real world, they've got drawbacks.
Hmm.
And so it's always kind of a trade-off, and so we work that into the mechanics. So there might be a potion that's basically, I mean, some of them, if you read the descriptions carefully, like, oh, that's a bottle of Tylenol, you know. And so I did some stuff like that, like chronic pain or something like that,
Hmm.
so it's like, well, some of it, like, oh, it's great until it wears off. um and how common are potions. It's not like you can keep a bottle of 200 of them with you. um
Right. Right.
and or like, okay, well, this spell, if you have a phobia, you can use a heroic spell, and that'll take care of that phobia for the duration. And you had to use a spell slot in order to do that, and now you
To
don't have that
offset it.
spell
Yeah.
slot for something else. So yeah, there's always some kind of trade-off, just like in real life. And so we wanted to kind of help people recognize that you can't just it doesn't just suddenly make things all gone. It's not like, I think the classic example is Daredevil.
Hmm.
um that, like, okay, so Daredevil, oh, he's blind, but is he? I mean, let's face it, he can see better than anyone.
Right.
And
And I think that's something that we have to be mindful too, because that can, I don't know if the word I want to say is marginalize, or allow us to just wave away the fact that this is a problem if
Mm.
you've got it, and we don't want to do that. And I think that that is part of what makes this um, supplement interesting. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this supplement that I currently have is just like a draft concept. You are planning to launch a Kickstarter and add more stuff, more art. Is that accurate?
yeah. So the Kickstarter is which launches January 4th is going to
Okay,
have um, full write up of 450 plus symptoms. Right.
that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'll tell you when I first started, you know, working on this and trying to figure out how to categorize and group everything. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was first starting out with, you know, like autism. Okay, and everyone will say you've heard this expression, autism's a spectrum. All
Yeah.
right. So how do you do write up on autism? And I looked around and I found some write ups, and basically, and they're good, and I really appreciate it, and I can't say enough positive about people that have said, hey, I want to include an autistic character in my game, and so therefore, I'm going to write up some mechanics to do it. All right. But the problem is how do you do that when you consider what a spectrum autism is? All right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one thing, and literally every disability is a spectrum. And so okay, how do you do that? And so I realized as I was looking through and just researching that for one, you have a lot of overlap. All right.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be amazed how many different conditions have chronic pain as a as part of that condition. And so I thought, well, there's no point in rewriting chronic pain over and over and over. If you
Right.
break this down into symptoms, you can just sort of group things to whatever it is. And so because of that, and I just realized this about a week ago, you can literally represent the entire autism spectrum using the mechanics in this book.
That's awesome.
Because yeah, because you've got all the different symptoms, plus it's broken down. You can with each symptom, you can have different frequencies,
Mm-hmm.
and so you know maybe it's in remission, and you never know when it's going to come back. Right? Maybe
Hit you right in the middle of battle.
yeah, or maybe maybe it's there and it kind of comes and goes and you never know when it's going to. Or you can even there's even mechanics for something that is degenerative, and if you want to play it now, a lot of people, I mean, there's all kinds of disclaimers, you know, built in there
Right. Right.
and stuff, that because a lot of people are not going to want to play a character.
A weaker.
um
Yeah.
yeah, that's like, well, you know, their days are numbered, but some people do want to play that character. All right.
Right.
And so it's in there, but with everything, every single table says you can choose or roll on this table. And because we don't want anyone to feel like they're, you know, kind of forced into playing this character that they don't want, or you know, or something
Right.
like that.
Delcinia says, I have a player who plays a character with depression solely because she wanted to see a character with her disability fight dragons and win. That I feel like is one of the cores of this, is it can make it relatable for people who don't get represented in regular pop culture type scenarios. You know, Daredevil, you mentioned as an example, is one of the few blind heroes, but is he really, as you had said? And
Well,
that's good.
well, I did want to shout out. I mentioned it earlier with comic book characters in general, because something that most people don't realize is in the comics, Hawkeye is actually deaf. And you never really saw that in the Marvel movies until the Hawkeye series, where they finally met, with all the explosives he's been around, his hearing's been damaged, he's walking around with hearing aids. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
And
Yep.
it
And I had
comes
that,
into play several times.
Mhm.
right. And I actually remember one time at Gen Con too, where we were playing Mutants and Masterminds. I was actually running Hawkeye as a playable character, and I actually did. And there actually was one point where his disability actually came up in combat, where I was fighting Black Canary, and she did a sonic scream at me. I'm like, Okay, DM, quick question. I want to find this attribute for this character. Does that affect me? I'm cool either way. Goes, oh, yep, you're deaf, you're good.
See, I
Yep.
like that as a benefit of the disability you had given your character.
Right.
And actually, remember in the movie Ninja Scroll, one of the, and I know this is a trip that you mentioned in your book, because it's a villain, mind you, that you're trying to avoid, but one of the villains they fought was a blind samurai. But he
Mhm.
used that to his advantage by creating an environment with flashes, which disables his opponent, but does not affect him at all.
Yeah,
Like
and
that.
and there's nothing wrong with having a villain with a disability. All
Right.
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 But if they're the only character in the whole story with a disability, or if
That's a
their
problem.
disability is is their defining feature,
Mhm.
um, you know, I was thinking of Darth Vader. You know, it's like oh that's scary. It's a respirator. There's nothing scary about a respirator, people. All right. But the way that it's worked into his character, it becomes this scary, ominous thing. Well, now how do people with that are actually on respirators or even need any kind of breathing equipment? Um, how does that make them feel then when
Yeah.
when that's treated as this sort of monstrous thing?
That's exactly, as somebody who doesn't have, that's not something I had ever considered. And now when you're right, when you make that a defining feature, that can definitely put some strain on um the person that who I actually have to deal with something like that on a regular basis.
Yeah,
Um
or if it's especially if it's their disability is the reason that they're a villain. Like, oh, this thing happened to me and now I'm disabled and therefore my life is terrible and I need revenge.
yeah, that's definitely something to avoid.
Yep. And
Um
another piece of media I thought about too as we're having this discussion is, have any of you watched or read the manga Basilisk?
no,
All
I
right.
have not.
Short version, general plot. Two clans have to resolve a conflict by having a 10 on 10 death match. Yeah, really. And
Sounds horrible.
it is. But and quite a few of the characters do have like physical disabilities in there too, but that's also a result of inbreeding, so they can focus on specific techniques. And one
Mm,
example is there's one character who you thought for most of the series he was blind, but you actually find out later on, oh, he's not blind. He actually has an eye technique. When he opens his eyes, anybody who sees his eyes then commits suicide, but he can't turn it off, which is why he always keeps his eyes shut.
interesting.
Yeah.
So that defect can be a strength,
Yeah. And
but
there's
can also, like Midas, touch something and turn it to gold.
Yeah.
It seems like a it's horrible or great at first, but becomes horrible. In this case, it's the other way around, taking
Yeah.
this thing that's bad and trying to find a way to use it in a way that's beneficial.
yeah,
I can give more examples, but that's the one that immediately comes to mind in particular. So,
yeah,
Go ahead,
and
Dale.
so the different symptoms, some of them do have bonuses.
mhm.
If you're
Mhm.
blind, then gaze attacks, yeah, you're not going to worry about that.
Right.
Um, and different things like that that are worked in to it, and but not everything does.
Right.
And I also made a point of differentiating between thunder damage and sound,
Mhm.
Mhm.
because thunder damage is vibrations, um,
Right.
and
Which is why
so
I asked about the ruling about the Sonic Scream earlier from like Black Canary. So,
yeah, yeah. So thankfully, fifth edition is really specific about what kinds of damages, classifications. Makes it real easy to rule on how some of that stuff works.
but well,
Right.
that's the thing. Like, Fifth Edition Two was trying to
Mm.
reduce the amount of categories in general, just to reduce the paperwork, if you will, in general for everyone. But
So we are running
and
low on main on our up on our time. You have another thing to add?
yeah, and what would you say, like, with this document that you've, with the research and your publication, what you have so far with it? What are the real benefits you've seen, or you feel that can come from this product?
See, I think number one, for one, we already had that comment
Right.
about being able to play yourself, right? And
Hmm.
I've had so many people that where I see somebody talking about ADHD on Twitter, and I send them the write up that I have. on attention deficit, which, by the way, again, there's lots of different kinds or expressions of ADHD, and so you can have that kind of, that exact reflection of your experience. But oftentimes I've just sent the one piece, the one attention deficit piece to people, and they've said, wow, yeah, that's me right there, and people that just repeatedly, or the depression, anxiety, that I show them what I have on that, and they go, this is what goes through my head every morning. This is my day. And so people feel seen and heard, and recognized, and but also we want people who don't have the benefit of having a lot of disabled people in their lives, right? And so they haven't had that exposure. And I know when I first, I mentioned I was way back in middle school that I first had this experience, um, and like I was kind of scared at first, and then once I actually had the experience, I was working with people and with developmental disability and stuff, and I went, oh, this isn't scary. This isn't scary at all, and this is great, and I really enjoyed it, and so part of this is to give people that sort of role play exposure to learn, number one, that that disabled and or neurodivergent or mentally ill. I mean, mental illness has such a stigma. To go, no, this is not scary. This is not, it's just part of life. And so once they experience that, then when they encounter people in real life, then it's like, oh, I'm used to this. And
I definitely feel like that is one of the big things that people do that they don't realize when they're not used to seeing somebody who has a disability or different. It tends to make them uncomfortable, not out of they've been taught that, but just out of generally ignorance, right?
Mhm.
And having more things like this can make that so it's less uncomfortable for anybody to be in that situation who's not been around it and doesn't know how to react. Because most people, and this is just Justin's opinion, when they get uncomfortable or they look or stare, I don't think it's usually malicious or anything, or something out of anger or something like that. It's just out of, I've never been in this situation and it's making me uncomfortable. And while I don't think that they're trying to be mean or rude about it, that's the unfortunate world we live in. So having more things like this that opens that up and making that the norm, that hey, you know what, this is a part of life, there's people that have to deal with this, it makes it so that it doesn't become that look and point type of situation. At least
Right.
that's just Justin's opinion.
Yep.
So
And I wouldn't mind reading this the product a little bit more in depth, just because I know I may have touched on this in the past, but I'm actually on the spectrum myself. Like years ago, when I was a kid, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and I don't think a lot of people realize like how wide of us, like you said, autism is a spectrum. There's so many things that fall under the qualifications that there's not really a one size fits all
right.
diagnosis, if you will. So.
Right. And I think so far, Dale, you've done a wonderful job including this. And as I was thinking about this, the other thing that I there's always been a fight about natural ones in D&D, about the fighter completely whiffing it or something. And as I'm looking at this, we talked about how things could be unexpected. I think having some sort of disability as that's intermittent could really fill that that narrative where, well, why did I get two ones in a row and miss? Maybe I fell asleep, or I had a short tremor or a seizure, or I lost my vision, or whatever disability they have. There's actually a part of the game that can explain that, I think, or at
Sure.
least include it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we move on to the next segment of the show?
Nah, stuff might come up later, but it's fine.
Okay.
Oh, I'll mention one more.
Okay.
We kind of let's touch on this. One of the other sections in the sort of introduction part of the book, there's always that question comes up about like, what about greater restoration?
Hmm.
And you kind of already mentioned that about, not everybody has access to that. It's
Right.
expensive or whatever. All right. But the other thing is that restoration can only restore that which is taken away, essentially. All right.
Ah, I see.
So if you're born with, like I had a guy on my show, he doesn't have forearm. His hand is attached where his elbow would be. All right.
Okay.
He's not missing a forearm.
Nothing to restore.
Yeah, there's nothing to restore there. All right.
That's
It's
a
just who he
great
is.
way to look at it.
And so trying to put, especially on a congenital condition, you're born with that, and some kind of restoration, it would be like trying to restore a tail to an elf.
Yeah, you're basically trying to use, by saying Lester restoration will fix it, you're implying that they were born with a problem when they were born how they were born, and that's the way it is, and there's nothing to fix.
Right.
And I think that is the right approach. Well done. So, I'm really excited for this. I can promise you have a backer right here, and I will shout it from the top of the channels and stuff when it goes live to help push this through, because I think this is something the world needs, and I hope that it just blows up. Okay, maybe a poor choice of words, but you know what I mean.
Nope. Appreciate
All
it.
right. So I think that'll do it for our main topic, the Limitless Heroics. I'm sure Alicia's been posting the links in the dibbly-doo somewhere. You can also head on over to critacademy.com and find this episode in the blog section and find links to all of the wonderful content that Dale has put out, and follow along with this journey of this project, because I'm sure it's going to get big. And I, for one, will start including these sorts of things in my D&D campaigns and settings. So I'm really excited for that. Now, the part where we have sold our souls to a random company.
Yep. Support for Crit Academy is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Go to manscaped.com and use code CRIT for 20% off plus free shipping.
Yes, Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their 4th generation trimmer features cutting-edge ceramic blades to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. I now feel confident in shaving my boys. This upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn your 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed to get a more precise shave in dark areas. The Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through additional guard lengths with sizes from 1 to 4. Maybe you got to find a perfect happy medium. Not everyone likes their lawn the same size, right?
Nope.
Did I mention it's wireless charging? If you haven't seen Brandon's unboxing video, it was so funny watching him try to figure out how it works. The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. And let's not be honest, boys, we like stuff that lasts longer, right? Now, men, if you have been shaving with the same nut trimmer on your face, you've been doing it wrong. It's gross. No person wants to end up with cubes in their mouth. It's time to get your own ball, hair, and body trimmer with Manscaped to make me time the best time and enhance your confidence with nice, smooth dice.
All right. Every guy out there needs to add Manscaped to their wish list this season. It is the Christmas season after all. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CRIT, once again, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. And once again, use the code CRIT.
Yes, please do.
CRIT, CRIT.
Please do. Shave that bag of holding, huh? The partner will love it.